Hi, this is Dr. Kurt Woeller for Autism Recovery System. This video is on 10 reasons to do the organic acids test from Great Plains Laboratory. So reason number one has to do with the ability to analyze for Candida yeast toxins instead of relying on stool testing. Testing for Candida is usually not very effective. The organic acid test is a much more effective way because what it does is it picks up on various types of toxins, as you see here. This arabinose marker, for example, is very common, and this indicates an invasiveness of Candida in the digestive system. Dr. Shaw, the innovator of the organic acids test from Great Plains Laboratory, has documented and reported over many, many years is that for individuals on the autism spectrum, their values of this toxic marker arabinose coming from Candida is oftentimes much higher than in individuals who are considered neurotypical of a same or similar age. So it's not to say that other people can't have arabinose too, it's just that the autistic kids tend to have much higher levels. And one of the things I've seen in clinical practice is I think that autistic individuals also tend to be much more sensitive neurologically to the presence. And the problem with Candida is it can become invasive. So it can not only just inhabit the GI system and alter, nutrient absorption, etc., and create these toxins, it becomes invasive, meaning it starts to grow these tentacles that infiltrate the tissue lining of the digestive system. And one of the things that has been documented with regards to invasive Candida is it can lead to leaky gut. Now, yeast organisms have the preference of wanting to use glucose or sugar as their metabolic fuel. One of the downsides to that, if you follow this pathway around, is right here, ethanol. The byproduct of yeast metabolism of glucose is the production of ethanol. And this has been observed in individuals with autism, where many of them can behave almost drunk in their behavior, almost like they've had alcohol. Goofiness, giddiness, silliness, inappropriate laughter, high self-stimulatory behavior have all been things that have been correlated in autism related to yeast. Now, other types of yeast behaviors can be found in adults, headache and chronic fatigue, etc. But the autistic kids tend to have this unique behavioral aspect related to some of these toxins coming from Candida. Tied to Candida too is that it can produce toxins that infiltrate, that adversely affect, I should say, what's called the Krebs cycle, which is part of the mitochondria. The mitochondria are these energy factories within our cells that produce the bulk of metabolic energy that our body uses. So Candida has the ability of inhibiting that function. Reason number two to do the organic acids test is the ability to analyze for a wide variety of Clostridia toxins. Now, most people think of Clostridia as related to Clostridia difficile, which is known to trigger digestive problems like diarrhea and inflammation, but there are other types of Clostridia bacteria that produce toxins too. And what has been documented, just like the markers for Candida related to autism, many of the toxic markers from Clostridia are also shown to be quite high in autistic individuals as well, specifically this compound called HPHPA. What happens biochemically in the body, and this is important to recognize, is that these Clostridia toxins, specifically HPHPA and another one here called 4-creosol, will inhibit an enzyme. And this enzyme, dopamine beta hydroxylase, is what converts dopamine to norepinephrine. And that is significant because when that conversion is inhibited or altered, we not only affect dopamine levels, but we affect norepinephrine levels, and there's an overlap in how these neurochemicals function, right? So dopamine has an effect on attention, has an effect on mood and cognitive function. but norepinephrine does as well. And then we start to interplay with serotonin. So we create imbalances in these different types of neurochemical systems that have a profound effect on behavior, on cognitive function, on attention, focusing, etc. Clostridia toxins can also affect the energy systems at the cellular level too. So they can affect the mitochondria as well. Reason number 3 for the organic acid test is to understand in the prioritization of treatment. A lot of people just focus on Candida, but often forget that Clostridia bacterial toxins have a profound effect too. And there's an interesting relationship that seems to occur clinically. What we've seen happening in the digestive system is if Clostridia bacterial toxins are present, and all you do is focus on yeast, many times the Clostridia can get worse. So the classic yeast symptoms of goofiness, giddiness, silliness, inappropriate laughter, etc., and the classic, behavioral issues linked to Clostridia, aggression, biting, kicking, screaming, for example, self-injurious behavior, sometimes both things are occurring within a particular individual. So in many cases, you have to really address both at the same time. And the only way to know that is to do the test. Now, this is not to indicate that aggressive behavior or all behavioral problems in autism are related to Clostridia bacteria, but the testing helps to discover whether these problems are occurring. Reason number 4 for the organic acid test is evaluating for something called high oxalates. An oxalate is a compound that will interact and attach itself to certain minerals. In this particular example here, we see this oxalate attaching itself to a calcium. And what happens is when these oxalates interact with minerals, they create a crystal. They create what's called a salt. And these crystals can deposit throughout the body. They can get into the kidneys, they can get into the joints and the connective tissue. These oxalates are also known to interact with heavy metals as well, like mercury. The organic acid test is an excellent way of analyzing for high oxalate, something also called oxalic or oxalic acid. And so oxalic acid and oxalates are similar. And so when oxalates are high, these too can affect adversely the mitochondria and the way the body produces energy. The most classic thing with regards to oxalate crystals is kidney damage. But again, these oxalate crystals can form in many other tissues in the body. Metabolically, even though it at face value here is a little bit complex initially, the bottom line is that for most people, the elevations of oxalate come from diet, eating foods that are really high in oxalates. So soy, spinach, many times nuts and seeds like almonds tend to be high in oxalates. Candida is also known to produce oxalates, and there can be other types of metabolic imbalances that lead to oxalate issues as well. Vitamin B6, for example. And in some cases, the oxalate levels are extremely high. This just happens to be a test sample of a child from China, where this is very likely a food-related problem. Could be high oxalate vegetables, could be soy consumption. So you can see that in many cases, the oxalate levels can be. And why that's important is from a symptom standpoint, oxalates can create a lot of problems for special needs kids. They can lead to behavioral issues. They can lead to eye pain, which can cause eye poking behaviors. They can lead to moodiness. They can lead to aggressive behavior. They can lead to pain on urination. So some of the kids actually had discomfort when urinating. In adults, they're known to trigger muscle pain, tendon pain, trigger point tenderness. Difficult to know if that's occurring in special needs kids, but many of them can't talk and tell you whether they're having that type of problem anyway. So it may be that they're having pain, but they really can't relate that, verbally. And then there's many different oxalates, treating yeast, low oxalate diets, and different types of supplements. Reason number 5 for the organic acid test is to evaluate for mitochondrial dysfunction. Remember, the mitochondria are the energy factories in the cells. They produce the energy that helps to run our nervous system, run our cardiovascular system, our digestive system, our immune system. So when the mitochondria are affected, then other systems in the body can be affected too. And the organic acid test does an excellent job at looking at markers related to this. One particular marker is called succinic. And this is really being understood now as almost an independent marker for mitochondrial stress related to environmental, chemical, and toxin exposure. So it could be a number of different toxic chemicals in the environment which we're exposed to, as well as heavy metals. So the organic acid test is an indicator of problems, certainly within the mitochondrial level, and it could also lead to further tests of environmental chemicals. I've touched on this already, and this has to do with the imbalances that occur in neurochemicals in the brain. This is reason number 6. When we start to interfere with these enzyme systems in the brain and nervous system, it's going to affect attention. It's going to affect memory. It's going to affect focusing. It's going to affect cognitive abilities. It will affect behavior. One of the downsides when this enzyme is inhibited by these Clostridia bacteria, dopamine levels at too high of a level can actually be toxic. They break down into toxic compounds which cause damage to brain cells. They rob the body of glutathione, which is a very important antioxidant. So there's a lot of havoc that comes when these enzyme systems are inhibited. Reason number 7 for the organic acid test is the evaluation of another type of neurochemical, serotonin, as well as a toxic compound, or I should say a potentially toxic compound, quinolinic acid. Now this section is fairly complicated, but just to do a brief overview, we produce serotonin in the brain to help with sleep, to help with mood, fine motor skills, gross motor skills. And what's been found is that many individuals with autism tend to have low levels of serotonin in the brain and nervous system, but oftentimes have high levels in the blood. And so there's not a crossover effect, meaning the blood levels of serotonin can't really get into the brain and nervous system. So we're really dependent on making brain and nervous system serotonin independently. And one of the ways we do that is through different amino acids and the conversion of some of these different enzymes. When there is chronic infections in the body, whether it's Candida, viruses, bacteria, Clostridia, or even just stress in general, the mechanism that's involved in the conversion of tryptophan to serotonin becomes compromised. And what ends up happening is the body starts to produce this compound called quinolinic acid. Now, quinolinic acid actually can have an antimicrobial effect itself. It actually has some role in mitochondrial function to help produce energy, but too much quinolinic acid is toxic. So what it does is it overstimulates brain cells, again, leading to oxidative stress, damage within the brain and nervous system. So this is an area that is analyzed off the acid test. Reason number 8 has to do with folate metabolism, which in a broader discussion is linked to the methylation cycle. And the methylation cycle is very important for, again, higher cognitive development, environmental awareness, language, social integration, attention focusing. And it's a complicated system, but an important one. It's actually part the ability to intervene in methylation problems is part of my 4-pillar approach to biomedical intervention for autism, an approach that I actually discuss in the Autism Recovery 101 course linked to the Autism Recovery System website. So what the organic acid picks up on is markers that can indicate a folate deficiency. Typically, we oftentimes will see uracil elevated. At times, the thiamine will be elevated too. So this indicates a need for additional folate to support the methylation cycle. Reason number 9 for the organic acid test is there's actions or markers that look at nutrient deficiencies. We can look at deficiencies in B12. We can look at deficiencies in ascorbic acid and B vitamins like B6. Even a marker that is linked to CoQ10, a very important nutrient that is necessary for mitochondrial activity and the production of the energy currency that runs our cells and runs our body. So this can be picked up off the uric acid test as well. And then finally, reason number 10 is to evaluate for glutathione production. There's other markers on here that look at imbalances in metabolism, etc. Let me just here on the section that indicates detoxification problems. It's not uncommon for kids who have mitochondrial issues, who have high Clostridia, who have high Candida, sometimes as well as high exposure to heavy metals or environmental toxins, to have deficiencies in glutathione. Glutathione is a very important antioxidant in our body. It helps to protect our cells, helps to protect our brain cells, and deficiencies of glutathione are quite prevalent in autism. It's linked to the methylation cycle. It can become easily depleted again with toxic exposure. And the organic acid test gives insight into the problem of glutathione deficiency based on these markers here, this pyroglutamic and 2-hydroxybutyric. So there's a tremendous amount of information here that interlinks with other sections and then certainly gives insight into other problems that could be analyzed as well. I mean, I'm really just touching on a few of the things here in this short video. So there's a website, Lab Test Plus. This is labtestplus.com, where many of the labs from Great Plains Laboratory are available, as well as other labs too, including the organic acids test. If a lab is ordered through Lab Test Plus, it will come with a personalized written interpretation of findings and then what are called action step suggestions based on the markers that are imbalanced off of that test. So you can go to labtestplus.com and research the site, look at the different types of test menus. And of course, ongoing questions are certainly available through the member forum of the Autism Recovery System website. So I'm Dr. Kurt Woeller for AutismRecoverySystem.com. Thank you so much.